This is definitely the first interview I've ever done in a tiki hut. I think again, it's to me, it's focusing on the journey. Well, we kind of crazily hired 70 people in one day. I think, and tying it into your title, honestly, curiosity. It's a fascinating time. You have a mentor in your pocket.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another great episode of the En Route to Discovery podcast. In this episode, we're diving into the journey of an early internet entrepreneur who turned curiosity and creativity into a mission to help local communities thrive. We'll explore how small skills can grow into big opportunities, how technology is changing the way we shop local, and what young entrepreneurs like me can learn from that path.
He's an expert in a lot of different areas, and he spends his time around token economics, utility tokens, blockchain, internet marketing, local economies, domain names. There's all kinds of great things that he's into, and like me, we have shared values on the idea of personal freedoms and privacy and decentralization and building community. And so, with no further ado, I would like to introduce my friend and entrepreneur, Colin Pape.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Mia. Thanks so much for having me on the show. This is definitely the first interview I've ever done in a tiki hut. And yeah, really excited to be here and to talk with you guys. Really think so highly of your family and what you guys are doing together on this podcast is just another great example of the really incredible life that you're leading. So yeah, thanks for
Amazing. Well, thanks for joining us. And you know what? I'm fiddling with some of the stuff because it's live here, like I say, but I want to jump right into this because I want to go right over to Mia here. And Mia had a list of questions, and she always has great questions. But in this particular case, it's cool because we get to know, she knows you a little bit ahead of time. So, Mia, do you want to start us off with your first question for Colin today?
Sure. Do you remember the first time you felt like you were like an entrepreneur? Do you think it was always in your heart to create and build things, or did it come later in life?
pretty early for me, and I grew up in an entrepreneurial environment. My parents worked together and had a paint store that they had since we were little, and so we always grew up with them running their own business, and it just kind of came somewhat natural. I mean, the first thing I think I did really to earn money was just cutting the lawns of some of our surrounding neighbors, and then when I was old enough to drive, I ended up starting a business doing pressure washing and deck staining and painting called Excellent Exteriors. And that was kind of a natural fit with my parents having a paint store. I could get leads from them. They would come in and somebody would be asking for work, and they could refer some of the jobs to me. And so did that. And then got into the internet pretty early, like 1997 was when I first started building websites and registering domain names. And again, that was kind of a bit of an offshoot from their business. I, built their website, registered their domain name. The first one I ever did was toplinepaints.com. That was their business name. And so, yeah, it started pretty early, and it's just been a thing all throughout my life. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm going to jump in because I know Mia was going to go with a question and talk about like your family relationship and how that kind of snowballed. But do you see some comparisons between, when you started, and maybe I'll go back a little bit, but when you started in the 90s in the internet and some comparisons today to what's going on in AI. So was there some skills that you learned then that kind of opened doors? And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, and then how you compare that to today's AI technology and what's going on today.
Both were absolute revolutions. Before the internet, which I think we're kind of the last generation really to be like pre-internet, and so that's kind of an interesting experience being at the beginning of that, and now our kids are like kind of the last generation pre-AI, which is really interesting. And so before that, I mean, things were just so much more I guess, personal and direct, and it was about, people and your individual relationships, and really the only other technology kind of that enabled that scale was like music recording and mass media, and not that many people were into that. Although, interestingly, when I was in high school, one of the things that was my favorite part of school was, at the time, it was called videotech. And so we got into that when we were, 15 up to 17, 18. And that was, pre-digital. So we had tapes, and, we were actually like doing reel to reel recordings and stuff. And it was a whole different world. But that ability to kind of like do something once and then reach more people than just the people that you were kind of in front of, to me was really empowering, and it was just a whole game changer when I realized that you could publish something, through FTP at the time, onto a website, onto a domain name, and all of a sudden anybody in the world could see it. That was a whole new paradigm. And we've got a whole new paradigm here that's happening. And I've, as you know, been involved in search, and that has been a real key to my entrepreneurial journey, and so, one of my main ventures. And I was really good at finding things on Google, and using Google very effectively to answer any of the questions. And now with AI, it's leveling the playing field that much more, so that just about anybody can, not just find what they're looking for, but actually build a whole execution framework to realize their ideas. Now it's become less about the technology, which was kind of my first iteration. It was, oh, how do we do this? Now, you don't need to know how to do it. You just need to be creative. You need to have an idea. And so I think, yeah, it's just kind of this continuing spectrum of empowerment that we've been seeing over the past 25, 30 years, where now anybody, Mia, or, my son Jackson, or your son Matt, you can have an idea, and you can put it into one of these systems and just have everything happen behind the scenes, and you don't really need to know all the hows, but you can end up with a really amazing result. So yeah, it's exciting.
Fantastic. Mia, any follow up to that?
Um, I I wanted to ask you, did you always feel confident starting something new, or were you figuring things out as you went? The reason I'm asking is because recently I started my own small business and an Etsy shop selling custom jewelry, and sometimes I worry about the Etsy shop or my website looking perfect before I promote it. What would you advise as a business?
And before you get into that one, because I think that's an important thing about
Yeah,
do things need to be perfect to launch?
yeah.
I want to go back to something that Mia was asking me and some other entrepreneurs is when you started building the websites back
Hmm.
then
Yep.
and get dabbling into that, was there a moment that it just clicked and said, I could do this. I could do this as a business and become an entrepreneur. So maybe start with that one and then dovetail into what she was just asking about. Once you decided you were going to be an entrepreneur, you became an entrepreneur, obviously. You've started many businesses. Then we'll jump to when you're starting a business. Tell us about, does it have to be perfect, or what did you learn along the way?
Yeah, I think everything entrepreneurial ultimately is rooted in just a sense of confidence that I don't have the answers right now, but I believe I can figure it out. And if you have that spark, you can translate that into just about anything, whether it's business, or personal relationships, or just uncovering what you want to do and how you want to show up in the world. I think that is really the key to everything. And if you're lacking that, then you're looking for people to tell you things all the time. And there's just that's the difference between being an entrepreneur and being somebody who is an employee, right? And so, back then it was my dad and I were talking, and it wasn't he didn't he provided kind of a basic, you know we had a computer and we had an internet connection pretty early, so I mean that was critical. But he was not saying, hey, can you create a website for my paint store? To him, that wasn't really that important, and at the time it probably wasn't that important. But I saw that other people were doing it, which is, I think, key to the entrepreneurial, journey and process as well. You're getting inspired by other people. You're seeing, oh, that person's doing that. I could do that. That person's doing that. I could put this spin on it and turn it into something different. And so I started seeing that, oh yeah, there are other businesses that have websites, and we should probably do something like that. And so well, how do I do that? What is this .com thing? And so I just had to fit. Well, I didn't even know what it was called, So I'm trying, and at the time it would have been Yahoo, it would have been like ask.com, and some of these really
We're
early
dating ourselves because I know
dating
all of
ourselves.
those as well,
A lot of
Colin.
people probably don't even know what they are anymore, but those were the early search engines. And then it's like, how do I get a .com? And it's as simple as just asking a question, which is why it really translates into AI. You're often just asking questions, but it kind of spiraled from there into, okay, now how do I build a website? The first website I built it was like a what you see is what you get editor called homestead.com. That was what I used for the very first thing. I didn't know how to code. I didn't know any of that stuff, and ended up, finding out a way, and I built the website. And then from there, and this is kind of where it becomes more entrepreneurial, is you end up, like my network at the time, because I was young, I was a teenager, I didn't really, but I was fortunate to be in a space where older people were deferring to younger people. And this is also where there's a benefit to you and, Jackson and Matt. It's like older people are looking to you guys as experts on technology compared to older people. And so it put me in a position where I wasn't at a disadvantage. Sometimes you have to get experience before people will, look to you to actually provide a solution. In this case, hey, I was young, and people just assumed, oh, he might be able to figure it out. And then my network it was my parents' network at the time. So they had their business, and through their business, they knew other business owners. Well, suddenly I start having other business owners. They saw my parents' website. Oh, how'd you get that? Oh, Colin built it. Oh, hey, could you do one for me? Okay. Next thing I know, I find kind of product market fit where, hey, this is a demand on the marketplace. They're willing to pay, hundreds of dollars for it. I know now how to do it. I can build it with Homestead, which was my first thing. It ended up evolving to Dreamweaver, which was another just, platform where you could kind of like drag things around, and I learned Photoshop and all that kind of stuff, and publishing it to a domain name. Those were kind of the skills that I was translating into revenue, and it was through that early network through them. And so that led me into then dealing with a bunch of small businesses in my hometown of Midland, which then kind of led to shopmidland.com, which led to shopcity.com. So it's kind of this, evolution, really.
Fantastic. So then following up on that, and where Mia was saying is like she started her own business.
Yeah.
And so she's always worried about it being perfect, but it sounds like that's not the case. You just kind of, as they say, fly the plane as you're, build the plane as you're flying it.
That's right. You got to get it out there, and then that's how you learn. You learn so you start off with an idea. Hey, maybe I'll sell beads, and maybe it'll be bracelets, whatever. And then along the way, you put something else out maybe into your store. You try a few different things, or sometimes it's not really about the product. It's about your marketing channel and how do people find out about me. But you never know. Like even today, I'm pivoting Shop City into a whole new thing. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know. Ultimately, it's like we're taking some feedback from the market, and then we're translating it into another try, and then from that we learn, and from those learnings, then okay, this is what's working. This is what people want. This is what they're willing to pay for. This is how much they're willing to pay. Oh, this is a way to reach them. And sometimes it just takes that one little click where it's an experiment, and the experiment becomes successful. And so yeah, it really will never know out of the gate. If you do, then you're amazing. That's like magician level wizardry, where it's like
that's
boom, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson for the people at home listening, especially the young entrepreneurs, the teenagers, is it doesn't have to be perfect. We say this all the time. Just get it out and let the market and your customers tell you what is good or what is bad. And then you can tweak it. And that's what you learn. You learn what your customer wants, what your customer needs. and how to do that fix so that you just keep getting better and better and better is what I'm hearing
That
over the course of it.
that's right, and it's just that kind of underlying desire to serve and to be willing to pivot and change. Hey, I had an idea. I thought it was the thing. Oh no, they're telling me something else. I'm observing that. Okay, how can I do that? Maybe even better than what they expect. They're telling me this. Well, man, I can take it and do this, which maybe they haven't thought of, but it's kind of aligned with what they're asking for. And now, next thing you know, yeah, that's a really good fit, and then you end up with, more support, more customers, yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Mia, another question for Colin?
Yeah, I think it's exciting to be a business owner, but I know it's not always going to be easy. So what's one thing you wish you understood or knew earlier in your job?
Question, I yeah, it's interesting, I think it ultimately needs to be about the journey because, that is something, that can translate some of the pain that you end up inevitably experiencing when you're trying to find a product market fit and you're trying to satisfy customers and you're running. I remember I had this. It was probably like my one of my most just like physically painful things was we had moved to a different town. We were in Midland. I had a whole server network that was in Midland, and we had moved to Collingwood, which is about just over an hour drive. And one night, I had the servers were just unreachable. Couldn't. So I drove from Collingwood to Midland, just over an hour in a snowstorm, middle of winter. Fixed the servers, which normally you could do it remotely, and normally I would have had somebody else do it. Rob Calvert, amazing guy. He always ran the network, but he got a job working for big accounting firm down in Turks and Caicos, and he had to take the opportunity. So I was left managing the servers. So I drive over, I fix the thing. It was like a physical reset. I drive back to Collingwood. As soon as I get back to Collingwood, the servers go down again. Ah, crap. I drive back to Midland. I fix it. I think I've got it even more fixed now. Okay, it must have been the underlying issue. Waited for a while. It kept working. I drive back to Collingwood. I get back to Collingwood, the damn thing goes down again.
Oh, no.
So 3 times in a night I drove, I was driving all night. I ended up just sleeping there after that because I was not risking going home and the thing happens again. But, ultimately that became part of my journey, right? And even though it was kind of like painful, and I've had some like very painful things, financially, like man, almost going, bankrupt, having to come up with $100,000 the afternoon to make payroll where I don't know where I'm going to get the $100,000. Like that kind of stuff is super painful, but ultimately it's part of the journey, and it is amazing what you kind of develop out of that. And I wish for my entire entrepreneurial career that I would have been more focused on that and not as much, on the outcome in that immediate term. It just makes it less painful. You're inevitably going to have pain. But if you're going, it's part of the journey, as if I'm doing this, as if I, drove to Collingwood 3 times in the night, as if I found $100,000 in a matter of a couple hours to make a payroll, like those kinds of things become part of your
Part of the
journey that
story
are
and part of the
pretty, yeah,
journey. It's amazing.
that's right.
You hear it so often because there's no such thing as an overnight success story. It's a lot of bruises. And Mia, I think you ask a good question is, yeah, there's excitement, but you got to know what you're getting into. And it's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. So I think it's a good question. I heard the word pivot a couple of times there. What's the next question you have on your list? I think it feeds well into that.
I've heard people that my dad speak to talk about how something they didn't plan for ended up shaping their entire path. I think my dad sometimes calls it a pivot. Did you have one of those moments or those turning points in any of your businesses?
Many pivots. It's almost continual pivot. That's almost really all it ultimately is. You come up with your best laid plans and then you try to put it out there, and then next thing you know, it's completely sometimes 180 from what you expected. Yeah, one of the pivots for me, and there's kind of a big one that's going on with Shop City right now.
Actually, that's where we go into our next question is talking about Shop City. So before you do that, yeah.
The one that actually became a very successful pivot was Presearch, because I had been looking at alternative currencies, local currencies, the ability for a community to have their own like digital dollar that they could utilize throughout their local economy for quite a while before Bitcoin was invented, before blockchain was a thing. And when I kind of realized and realized actually pretty late because I had not had my attention to it that there was a thing cryptocurrency and blockchain and the ability to create a digital token in 2017 when my good friend Matt Radman educated me on, oh wow, you're like missing this crazy opportunity. You gotta, oh wow, this could be a thing that Shop City could use, and now all of our local cities could have their own dollar, and started looking at how I could do that. Ended up getting connected with a really incredible guy, Addison Cameron Huff. He was the founding lawyer for Ethereum, which was it's the second biggest crypto project or blockchain technology in the world. And he advised me, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't do that with Shop City right now. It's too much of a gray area. There's some regulatory issues. There's too much risk. You might put your business at risk. And I thought, oh man, I can't believe we're gonna miss this opportunity. And on the way home from a meeting with him, with one of my co-founders, Rob, we kind of both. It was the weirdest thing. Both at the exact same moment, we turned to each other in the car and we're like, pre-search, which was a concept that we had had, and we're using in a totally different manner, but it clicked for both of us at the same time. Maybe we could use that as a whole different venture. We could learn how to do this stuff, and then we could figure out all the risks and go through all the regulatory uncertainty, and then apply the learnings to Shop City. And so we did. It was something that I kind of had a domain name for because I had this very basic prototype that I had built and was utilizing internally, and wrote a white paper and put it out on this thing called Bitcoin Talk, which was where people were launching different crypto projects, and it started getting traction. And I had had a pivot experience previous to that, which was a run-in with Google in 2011, where they blocked all of our sites, and we ended up going into a whole legal kind of battle with them and the Federal Trade Commission in the U.S. and the lawyer who broke up Microsoft with Windows and Internet Explorer in 1999 was representing us, and it was like this whole crazy, really bad experience. It was not good. Um, we kind of barely survived it. Well, from that, I was able to now know kind of the perils of the Google ecosystem, translated that into this white paper, and was able to articulate, hey, this is the danger to our world of having this one search engine that is dominating everything, and here's what they can do. That white paper was very well received. Next thing we know, we have people sending us millions of dollars in Bitcoin and Ethereum to launch pre-search, and that became a whole success. Even surpassed Shop City's success. And so it was just a series of kind of negative things that you survived. You identify the opportunity, you pivot into it, you lean into it as you see traction. Next thing you know, we've got a success.
So I was wondering, for those at home who have never heard of Shop City, how would you explain what it is and why have you decided it was important to start?
So Shop City kind of evolved from the initial business. Again, there's kind of the theme of evolution and pivoting. It was originally, so I was building these websites for these local businesses. This was the early days. This was very first digital cameras. Like literally before that, you used to have to do the film. If you've ever seen the film cameras, and then you would have to scan them. You used to have to, like, you would take a picture and then you would have to bring it to a place and pay like 20 or $25, and they would give you like 24 photos back. It was like almost $1 a photo, and it was like printed on a thing, and then from there you could put it into a scanner, and then that would bring it into a computer. It was like so I ended up getting one of the very first digital cameras that was out there, a Fujifilm, and so we were out there, building these websites and using this digital camera to take photos of these businesses. and then started realizing, oh, there's no way to kind of link them all together and for people to easily find these local businesses. And then at the same time, again, bit of a pivot and a bit of a threat was this was 1999 going into 2000. Midland is a small town, like under 20,000 people, and it was almost all local businesses up until that point. Well, all of a sudden, bigger chains, big box stores started coming into the community. So all of a sudden, we had a Home Depot, we had a Walmart, and for my parents, both of them sold paint. We had another one, Rona, that came into town. So this was all new competition for them. And so I was thinking of them in mind. I was very, passionate, obviously, about threats to their business, but it also impacted all the other businesses in the community. And so I started thinking, there's got to be a way that we could use the internet to bring all these businesses together. And if we could find a name that kind of like, meant a place where you could find all the local businesses, and then something that we could market out in the community and really advertise it really well. And so I came up with the concept for shopmidland.com, which was kind of a directory of local businesses and websites. It ended up going beyond just websites, and we started building profile pages, almost like early Facebook pages, you could say. That was kind of Web 1 version of it. And so we were charging, $350 a year for businesses to have a profile page. We would do a description. At the time, there was no Google Maps, so there was a thing called MapQuest. We would go on and we would screenshot a little spot of where they were on this digital map and embed that into the profile page, and then take photos with the digital camera and upload them. And so that was kind of the product. And then the go-to-market strategy was guerrilla marketing, and it was these 2 foot by 1 foot Coroplast signs that said shopmidland.com, support your community, and had 150 of those made for $450. They were $3 a pop, and went out with my college roommate Ryan at the time, and his Volkswagen Jetta and a ladder, and we put these signs up all over town on street posts, and did it over a weekend. People started coming in to town to go to work on Monday, and all of a sudden they see these signs everywhere. And it's amazing the marketing impact of repetition of a brand in a place you don't expect it, when you see it dozens and dozens of times in a very short order. So next thing we know, everybody's talking about it. The Chamber of Commerce asked us to come in and partner with them. The town of Midland asked us to do a deputation, and it just kind of became a thing. And then Google came around, and we ended up adding just a URL search field onto the top of shopmidland.com. That was how a lot of people found out about Google in the area. They didn't know about Google. They knew about Shop Midland. They knew that they could run a search, and then it would kick them over to Google. And so it was a way where we kind of like had a bit of a hack where we got some of the credit for this amazing new search engine, and it became a sticky factor for Shop Midland. And so that was the initial version. From there, we started having people say, oh man, could you do it for shopwasaga.com? That was the next one, Wasaga Beach next door, shopcollingwood.com. And then I got together with my now wife, Tara. Her father, Tim, who's passed away, was in the franchising business. And he was like, this would be a great franchise. You should. And so started registering all these other domain names, shop, wherever, Mississauga.com, shopberry.com, all other places. Tried to find the US one, shopnewyork.com, shopboston.com. Somebody else, my business partner, Jim Terry, had already bought all of those up. Ended up meeting him at a conference in San Francisco in 2007, and took a couple years to put it together, but we ended up kind of merging our domain portfolio together, and then going, in 2008, we incorporated Shop City. And then in 2009, we merged together and planned to launch them everywhere. And so since then, we've kind of had, different pivots. Then it becomes, okay, it was like a franchise program. How do you find somebody to run it and go out and do the marketing and all these things? And, we saw some success with it, I would say. We launched about 50 different markets and supported all the entrepreneurs who were doing it. Sometimes we
I think the timing is perfect for that pivot and doing it now, because it's all the talk is shop local is everything.
It really is great timing.
You talked about Midland and that the build up of building that city. Was there any other city that kind of stood out as a city that was fun to work with, or that really grabbed onto it or anything?
I mean, it's really ended up being dependent on the entrepreneur who we partnered with, who was running it. Like Lynn in Aurelia has done an incredible job. Rick in London, Ontario has done an incredible job. The guy Brian in St. Albert, Alberta has done an incredible job. But before we even went to that model, we thought, oh, well, we should partner with those who already have local business relationships. So, at one point we partnered with Embarcadero Publishing, who publishes the local newspaper in Silicon Valley. So they had the Menlo Park Almanac and the Palo Alto Weekly and the Mountain View Voice to run those sites. They, hired kids to go put stickers up all over town. We built an app so that we could onboard the local businesses. They partnered with the local governments. That was kind of how our run-in with Google ended up starting. It got on Google's radar, and then at one point we licensed.
Fascinating journey.
Yeah. At one point we licensed shopbuffalo.com to the Buffalo News, which was owned by Berkshire Hathaway. So we were like one level away from Warren Buffett. This was a business just in Buffalo, did over $100 million a year in advertising revenue. And they had, hundreds of 750 employees. We went down to train them. They had their own auditorium, and I'm, standing there educating, 75, 100 sales reps on how they could sell it. So interesting things that ultimately, didn't end up really working as we thought they would. And you see so much potential, but it turns out
But stepping stones.
into now, okay, we realized from there, okay, that it doesn't work. The media companies, they're used to selling these like things that cost thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. It's hard to get them to focus on these things that cost hundreds of dollars. And then from there, okay, we need our own sales force then. Well, CanPages, which was the second largest directory company in Canada, had been bought by the Yellow Pages for $225 million, ran for 2 years, and then they shut it down. We got wind of it. A lot of their people were out of Barrie, which was very close. And so we thought, oh man, this is our move to now build our own sales force. Well, we kind of crazily hired 70 people in one day. So we went from 10 employees to 80 in a day.
And how'd that work out for you?
Absolute chaos. It was chaos. Tara and I, we bought iPads for 70 people. Tara and I had them set up all across our kitchen counter. And like literally it was like a factory because you were setting up and configuring iPads. You'd press a button on one, then move to the next, move to the next, move to the next. And we hired them. We didn't have enough money, honestly. We had, a couple $100,000 in the bank, and we needed millions. Well, I instantly started going out and, pitching venture capitalists, and we ended up getting term sheets and thought, okay. And we went kind of all in on one that seemed like a really good fit. And we thought, oh, this is going to be amazing. And then they dragged us out for months, and it ended up, oh, they actually didn't have the money themselves, and they were trying to, raise the money and just about kill me. That was the time where I had to come up with $100,000 for payroll on a Friday that I didn't have at all.
That sounds like a familiar story, though. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who, are successful today, and it's because of those,
painful.
Yeah, at least you have all your hair. I lost all mine in those early days with those things that,
Yeah, yeah.
So,
there it ended up pivoting to these city managers.
Tell us a little bit where it is today, and you got a big pivot going. So I think that's important for the people at home to listen to where Shop City is today.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll dovetail in. I know this was a question that Mia was wanting to ask, but where do you see the future of shopping local going with what you're creating here?
Yeah. So we ended up doing the city manager thing, which then became more of like the entrepreneurial, franchise type program, which again had some success, but also difficult to scale, difficult to find people who and ultimately those people had limited ability to do the actual marketing that has been the success. I did the guerrilla marketing. It was technically against the bylaws. It was technically illegal, us putting these signs up all over the place. I didn't know at the time. So it was easy for me to do it. Well, they kind of know that it's illegal, and it's hard to get people to have the courage to go do something, even though if you look at Airbnb, if you look at Uber,
Every
all
window
those,
washing, everybody, there's stickers all over the place, but that's why it is illegal, is because they don't want to mess everywhere.
that's right. But
Because nobody takes them down.
that's right. People don't take them down, but it's been tougher to find people who would go out and do that. And so, we started looking at, okay, how can we pivot this again to take advantage of that marketing? And that's why now we are selling directly to city governments and enabling them to now use this platform to empower their local businesses and support their local economies. And it's something that economic developers really have as their mandate, and it's a great fit for them. And they have that ability to put signs up around town and do things that others cannot do as an official city initiative. And then really the other just big shift with us has been AI. So, we were kind of locked into a platform that I had originally built, and it works really well, but it's been harder and harder to just update. It's got technical debt, and so we've been thinking for years, we need to completely retool this thing, but it's been very daunting. And so looking at it this way, okay, hey, we've kind of got a legacy business that we support, which is our existing city managers, and we've spun that off into a different company, shopcities.ca, because they're pretty much all in Canada. And now we've got a new business, shopcity.com, which is out of the US now, and we're leveraging AI, and the entire platform is powered by AI. And instead of us trying to be everything and be a publishing hub that syndicates content out to different places, now we're an aggregator. So we are taking the existing content that's out there on Google or Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else, and we are helping make sense of it and turn it into an AI powered experience that doesn't take the work that the old one did, but actually has a better user experience.
And a better impact for the local economy. I know a lot of what we're talking about is probably going over Mia's head on the technical side and all that stuff, but I think it's important because to your question of shopping local, we need to support local economies. We need to support local businesses more and more as things grow. So I think this is going to be amazing. And I know the uptick from the local governments that you've already been talking to, and as you're implementing these pilots and doing this new switch, I know how well it's going and how the feedback has been so great. So I can't wait to see it in our local areas in York region and in Greater Toronto area, but right across. So I think it's fantastic, Colin, how you kind of pivoted that. I do want to be cognizant of your time. I know that there is some noise distractions for the viewers back home. If you can hear the background, sorry about that. But Mia, there's a couple of questions to wrap up with that bring it back to, our younger audience. So you got a couple more questions and then we'll close out with Colin. So yeah.
Okay. This one was one that I was actually hoping the answer more than anything. For young people like me who want to learn about entrepreneurship, what's one piece of advice that you think every beginner should hear?
I think again, it's focusing on the journey. It's not being discouraged when you don't get the outcome that you're intending right out of the gate. It's focusing on the learning. Um, I you know Jackson a couple of years ago started playing Fortnite, and I will occasionally play Fortnite with him, or even now by myself sometimes. It's an incredible game, and it's really actually for me. I see a lot of parallels with real life and with video games and Fortnite, and if you think about it, like many of us when we're thinking kind of entrepreneurial success, you're thinking of like, well, what is the outcome? Oh, I get money, or I have whatever prestige or employees or whatever it is. But if you think about when you're playing a game, picture if you just ended up at the victory royale screen, but there was literally no game leading up to that. It would be pretty boring. You would be instantly like,
Such a great,
right?
great analogy.
You would end up with one victory royale screen, and you'd be like, "Oh, cool, I got one." And then the next one, you'd be like, "Oh, this is super boring," and it means nothing to you. What actually is meaningful is that game that you're playing, and it's how you're getting from here to there, and the things that you're encountering along the
Boom.
way.
That's never
right?
heard it
That's a
described that
great
way
way
for
to
a
put
young
it.
audience, but that is so bang on.
And so it's focus on the journey, focus on the game. Hey, if you get a victory royale, that's all the better. But like you don't need that. And if you don't focus just on that, you focus on the things like a lot what really got me thinking positively about Fortnite, because honestly, when Jackson started playing, we were hearing all these bad things. Oh, it's addictive, and it's you're shooting guns and all these kinds of things, and we were pretty apprehensive. Well, he was playing with his buddy Noah, and I spawned into the game, and me being old and not knowing how to play video games, and I sucked at it. Well, I immediately get demolished, right? And so I'm crawling around on the ground, like almost dying, right? And they rush up to me and they revive me. And then, Noah throws me a med kit, and then I reboost my health completely. And then I realize, I'm like, this game is about teamwork. This game is about other people. This game is about things that are really relevant actually to life. And, the shooting is just, a part of it. And that's kind of your really competitive nature. But um, entrepreneurship is kind of, somewhat the same thing. So some of the things that I'm most proud about have nothing to do with money. They have nothing to do with a financial outcome for myself. It's, hey, I have maintained business relationships with people for over a decade, or in some cases, decades. I've, collaborated with people across real struggles where, man, a lot of people would have turned on each other and hated each other. And instead, I found ways to work with somebody who I really respect through a very challenging moment. And, through their sacrifice and my sacrifice, we've ended up, you know, remaining together, overcoming that immediate objective, and ultimately going on to another win, right? And so I think, like, for young people, you guys are starting out. If you can think about it in that framework of video games, it's just something that's relevant, and yeah, don't just focus on the outcome. Focus
Not going to
on
lie, I'm going to steal that one when I'm talking to young entrepreneurs,
yeah,
because it's such a good way to describe it. It's about the journey. It's about the game.
yeah,
It's not always about the prize, because once you get the prize, okay, I got it. And then you're going to
right.
play another game to look for another prize.
That's right.
And so it's the game that it is. And final question to bring it home here for questions, Mia. You have another one?
I think
Anything else?
I'm gonna do the last question on my list of questions that I prepared here. If a teenager wanted to start their very first product or business this year, what would be the simplest first step, or what would be the first AI tool they should learn?
I think that's an important one too, because there's a lot of hype there and there's a lot of noise right now with AI. So rather than the first step to start the business, maybe it plays well in there. But what you're seeing, somebody who's been on the forefront of technology your whole life, if somebody wanted those early steps, what do you recommend for somebody in their mid-teens or even early 20s that are hearing all this hype about AI? What would you say?
I think, and tying it into your title, honestly, curiosity is really the cornerstone of all this, because now we all have almost all the knowledge at our fingertips. We have the ability to execute things like we never could before. And like when we were starting, like when I had my first server network, uh, I had to commit to a 5-year, $2,000 a month contract just to get a T1 connection, which is like 1/100th as fast as what you have on your phone now for $50 a month. And there was like a lot that you had to invest. The risk was way higher, and so it's more about, just the curiosity and trying to find ways that you can create value for people. And then, I mean, any of the general AI tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Grok, which is my personal favorite, or any of the if you're asking it questions, and if you can literally ask it the question, how can I use AI to build a business? Or, hey, I'm Mia, I'm 14, I'm really creative, I'm great at anything to do with culinary arts. I have a fashion sense. I like any type of organization and doing these kinds of things. What are some ideas that you might suggest? How could I utilize it? And then it's just taking from there. It's giving you some, and building upon it. And it's generally not going to happen in one question. It's going to happen in kind of a series, but that series of questions kind of requires curiosity, and you just thinking like, how could I solve this better? How could this fit my lifestyle better? Which is another thing that I think is really important moving forward. We've gone from a world where people were often sacrificing their lifestyle for income. And you guys are the perfect example of marrying lifestyle and income and trying to figure out, hey, what is going to work, and that's going to be variable for everybody. So part of that prompted to AI could be, hey, look, I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to do whatever. I don't want to have to go to university. Whatever, any of those things. Those are all kind of preferences that you have, and it's to some degree being curious about yourself and having curiosity about kind of the quality of life that you want to have, and then leveraging those things because they come up with incredible suggestions, and it's like we all have a mentor now, that like in the past, you and I have both been lucky. I watched the video with your dad the other day, and like you grew up with an awesome, entrepreneurial dad as a mentor. I did as well. And I bumped into a guy very early days that really nurtured me and got me, Think and Grow Rich as a book, which is another great resource that everybody should check out. And gave me some financial resources and some technical resources, but you don't need that now, honestly. If you don't have
It's
that,
a fascinating time.
it's a fascinating time. You have a mentor in your pocket with Grok or Chat GPT, and you can ask questions and you can explore your curiosity, and you can end up finding things that can enable you to live the lifestyle you want while creating value for others and generating income. And it's just, yeah, really exciting time to I think be young and look at all the different opportunities that honestly, man, like they were not possible.
It's so exciting.
It's so
And I don't even think for just young people. I think for any age right now, like I know that there's 50-year-olds or 60-year-olds that,
Yeah,
why would I take the risk? But they can now.
that's right.
But I think that's a good way to close. For the young people out there, he mentioned another great resource, Think and Grow Rich. So if you're going to do a couple of things this week, this month, this year, go get yourself a copy of Think and Grow Rich. Get yourself your large language model like Grok or ChatGPT or any of those, and just start learning and be curious and ask it. And when you don't know the question, say, I don't know the question. Give me the question to ask you. I think that's an important one. And that's where, it's great. And for everybody listening, I do apologize if the sound doesn't come across great here. We have an airplane going by right now. We just had a boat go by, but that's one of the downsides of recording in this beautiful background. We will be doing some in some other settings. We might even record another podcast in this setting with one of our guests that are lined up. I do thank you for tuning in. Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure learning more about your business journey and your entrepreneurial journey. I know that you and I have had a lot of conversations about technology, but I didn't really know all of the ins and outs and everything. So thank you for sharing that with me and with Mia and obviously with our audience. Really, really appreciate that. Mia, anything you want to say to the people listening at home?
Um,
I always put you on the spot at the end.
yeah. Thank you, Colin, for being on our podcast. And I know it's hard sometimes. I've gone through some hard business stuff, but just keep going. Like,
I love hearing that, Mia, that you've already figured out your challenges and go past it. And I think that's important for our audience at home. I know it's a younger audience. So don't worry when stuff doesn't go great because you're so young. There is lots to do, and life is like this, and so is entrepreneurship. And I always say that when it feels tough and it's rough, that means you're near the bottom of where the feeling is. And then from that point, you're coming to a rise, and there's always going to be a rise at the other end. So keep rising, keep loving life, keep loving the journey. And thanks again. We'll call that a wrap. Appreciate it. Oh, one last thing. If they want to learn about Shop City, what's the domain that they can go to, or where do you recommend people go to?
Yeah, just shopcity.com. You can check it out.
Perfect. Shopcity.com. Look for the big updates that are coming. I know the new year is all full of surprises at Shop City. So look forward to seeing you there and look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks again for tuning in.
Thanks, you guys.